Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Lynn Nesbitt. I'm chairing today's panel. Joining me on the panel are Ian Mann and Bill Moratsky. Our secretary today is Louise Boilly, and our assessor is Roddy Pontania. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1, 2, and 3 on our docket today. Ms. Boilly, please affirm the assessor's and applicant's testimony.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Roddy Pontania.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And applicant, please stand. Please state your full name.
Les Sitkowski.
Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Good morning, Mr. Pontania and Mr. Sitkowski.
Morning.
Today we're dealing with item number 1 on our docket, file 22-4846. Before we begin, are there any preliminary issues?
None that I believe.
Okay, then Mr. Pontania, you may begin with your presentation, please.
All right, and I apologize in advance if I forget anything, but I've been bouncing between business assessment and realty lately, so sometimes they're different presentations. But I'll start here. So up next, we have file 22-4846. The roll number is 0500-943-2325. The address is Unit 5-2358 McPhillips Street. The 2021 assessment had gone out at $517,000. So the property that we're speaking of is labeled as a commercial condo unit. The actual and effective year built was in 2021. And we do have a leasable area for the subject at 2,000 square feet. So on page 2 of my brief, you'll notice the location of the subject property and its orientation on towards McPhillips Street there. So it looks a little recessed from McPhillips Street, and it appears that the access is from Court Avenue to the subject. For pictometry, we do have an overhead view of the subject property, so we can see what it looks like from the overhead view. And then we have a north-facing view and a west-facing view following that on page 4. And then on page 5, we do have some images of the subject property. These images were provided by the appellant, and I really appreciate that, as we don't really have the latest pictures on file for the subject property, as it was built in 2021, and the Google Maps hasn't updated that yet. And with the volume of appeals that we have going with the department, it was a little hard to get out. So I appreciate that he allowed me to use his photos there. And unless the appellant corrects me, I believe the unit 5, if we're looking at the bottom image on page 5, I believe it's to the far right of the building there. So it's a little hard to see, but the far right, that's the unit that we're speaking of. On page 6, we don't have any income and expense information. As I mentioned, the building was completed in 2021, so we have no mailer information yet for the subject. And we don't have any sales history, of course, as it was built in 2021, and we also don't have any leases as it was built in 2021. And further to the leases, my understanding is that the subject is owner occupied. So on page 7, I have included some comparable information. So this subject actually has 2 valuations that were on file. The original valuation that we're speaking of, $517,000. That's actually a market model valuation. And the market model valuation is derived from comparable sales of similar property types. And as well, we also have an income valuation on the subject. So this market data is in relation to the income valuation on the subject. And so you'll note there that I have included different subjects here, and their rents range from $15 at the lower end up to, it looks to be $18.86 at the higher end. And then again, we have some commercial condo rent comparables following that. So these would be commercial condo units, and this would be the lease information that we have on file for those units. And so you'll note that we have a rent range from $17 at the lower end up to $19 at the higher end. And that would be for effective year built of 2008, since they're all from the same subject there at 147 Provencher, and our subject is 2021. Following that, on page 9, I do have some commercial condo market sales. So we do have some information there, some comparable information. So I have included 4 subjects. The first one is from 475 Provencher Boulevard, Unit 208. And if we just quickly go through the parameters and we go to the bottom of the sale sworn value price of $100,000 and the gross area of 370 square feet. It does give us a sales price per square foot of $270.27 per square foot. For my second comparable, I have Unit 103, 250 Marion Street. This unit sold in 2016 for $235,000 for 932 square feet. So that gives us an overall sales price per square foot of $252.15. For my third comparable, we do have Unit 104 at 250 Marion Street. Once again, this was built in 2016. It sold in 2017 for $226,000, and that was for 932 square feet, which gives us a price per square foot of $242.49. And then on my final comparable, I have Unit 102 from 250 Marion Street. Once again, 2016 for the build year, and it sold in 2016 for $226,744. And that was for 925 square feet, which puts the subject at, or this comparable at $245.13 per square foot. And so if we look at this as a total, we do have a range there. So the range we have $242.49 at the lower end up to $270.27 at the higher end. And the subject that that's currently under appeal is valued at $517,000 for 2,000 square feet, which equals out to $258.50 per square foot. So we can see that our subject is within the range of the market sales that we have on file. And the reason why that's important is because on the following page, on page 10, you'll note that we do have the market income valuation for the subject property. So this was the valuation from the income approach, using a rent rate to then drive our assessment. And the rent rate that we have on file is for the subject was $20 per square foot, and that rental rate was for 2,000 square feet. From there, we do have model parameters of a 5.5% vacancy, a 2% expense rate, and a $7 shortfall per square foot. That brings us to our net operating income of $36,274. From there, we have applied a modeled cap rate of 5.55% to bring us to our overall valuation of $654,000. But the $654,000, once again, that's the valuation under the income approach. The subject was valued and had gone out under the market model approach. So once again, the market model approach uses the sales information that we have for similar property types. And under the sales information that we have, the model gave us a value of $517,000. So that 517 is significantly less than what the income valuation was of $654,000, using $20 per square foot. From there, on page 11, we do have an income value summary of the subject property, but once again, this is under the income approach to value, which we're not putting forward as we have it under the market model approach. And then from there, we have some cap rate information for this assessment cycle. And unfortunately, we have nothing for commercial condos. That falls under the retail column. And then on page 13, we do have some Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. And then on page 14, and then taking us to the end of the presentation, as I previously mentioned, we don't have any income and expense information as the subject was built in 2021. And so I included some just some records of information that we have in the office in relation to the subject properties. So we have the plan identification form on page 14, which lists the units, and then the work description of the work that was being done within the subject. And it's my understanding that all this work has been completed. And then on page 15, we do have a site plan layout of the subject property, so we can see where the commercial, they call them CRU units, but once again, this is a commercial condo. It's not necessarily a CRU like a strip mall would be, as the subject has its own roll number. But it is laid out in a similar fashion. One can look and easily see that the units are all laid out side by side. And once again, I believe it's the unit on the far right, and it says Unit 5 there as well. And then on page 16, we just have another site plan, just listing the overall orientation of the subject, which is in white there. And that's for the whole building that's built there. And then once again, underneath that, we do have the, in white, we do have the subject again being shown there. And then on page 17, we have a main floor finish plan, which lists the layout. It's my understanding that it's being used as a medical office, maybe a dentistry, I believe. And so it shows the layout of the subject there. Page 18 has another image of the subject layout. I believe this is the electrical layout of the subject, or perhaps the HVAC. I'd have to take a little bit of a closer look there. And then on page 19, and taking us to the end of our presentation, is the 2020 cap rate addenda information that we had. So this is a rebuttal to the cap rate information that was being put forward during the cycle. And so I just included it as it was being included for the 2020 appeals that were done. And that gives you some information there. And then that takes us to the end of our presentation. And thank you. That is my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pontonia. Mr. Sitkowski, do you have any questions for the assessor?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairperson. Mr. Pontanilla, did you have a chance to inspect this property?
I didn't know.
Drive by it?
No, I haven't driven by, sorry.
So you, but I think based on the pictures that you provide in this and the site pictures that you provide, you do show that it is located off McPhillips Street. In fact, it's located behind other buildings that are facing McPhillips.
Yes, that's correct. Even I didn't drive by it for this particular appeal, but I am very familiar with the neighborhood, and just basing off my familiarity, it is correct that the building was built a little recessed from McPhillips Street, so that's a fair characterization.
Well, Mr. Pontanilla, I might argue that it's not just a little bit back from McPhillips. It's several hundreds of feet back from McPhillips. Would you agree with that?
I haven't measured it, but it is recessed from McPhillips.
I'm
I'm not exactly sure of the distance.
Pontini, we're having a little bit of difficulty hearing you. Could you?
Does that sound a little better?
So far, yes.
So to answer your question, no, I haven't measured the distance from McPhillips Street, but I will concede that it is recessed away from the visibility of McPhillips Street.
And I think you in your presentation, you did mention that you were talking about the access to the building, and I think you said the access to the building is from Court Avenue. Is that correct?
Yes, I did say that. That would have been from the images that I reviewed when I was looking at the Google Maps review that I was doing of the overall neighborhood, and it looked like the access to that particular section was from Court Avenue. With that being said, the latest update that I was looking at doesn't show the subject. That's why I had to use your images in my presentation, because the latest update that we have on Google Maps actually doesn't show the subject yet. I believe it's a 2016 update that it has on there.
So you don't know then that if you're talking about that access from Court, that is a back lane. That is a lane that.
Okay, I only saw it as a lane. I wasn't sure if it was a back lane or not, but I'll take your word on it.
I'm sorry, it's not a back lane, but it's a lane.
Sure. Okay, I'll take your word on that.
Okay, because I mean I visited this property
Yep, no worries.
several times actually, and in your opinion, there are no accesses from McPhillips Avenue.
Well, I haven't looked at it, so I don't want to say something that's incorrect. It was just from my review online. It looked like that one lane that you were speaking of was how you would access the subject. But I'm sure, I mean, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but there's a chance, of course, that you could enter from McPhillips and drive around the building that's in front of an access, but you would have to illuminate us about that, as I'm not sure of how to access it from McPhillips.
And do you know what buildings are facing McPhillips in front of the subject property?
It looks like, give me 1 second here. Does it look like there's is that where there's a parts? Is there like
I'm sorry, Mr. Pontino, I didn't hear that.
Is that where there's is there like a Tim Hortons in front of there, or is there something like that? That's just, I'm trying to go off memory of where that exact location is. I know that it's near to a Walmart that's around the corner there, but I'm trying to remember what the exact building was that it's in front.
So if I told you that one of the properties is a Tim Hortons on the right side, and the other properties, the other building is a Part Source building,
yeah.
Would you agree with that, or would you argue?
Yeah, no. I think that's, my memory is also telling me that there's a Tim Hortons there, and then I wanted to say it was a building store beside it, because I think there is a building store nearby. But if it's a Part Source, sure, yeah, I can see a red building there. So,
if I told you that there was an access to the subject property between those two buildings from McPhillips, would you disagree with that?
Just looking at my images here, it does look like there's some parking lot there. I wouldn't disagree. It looks like there is access.
And if I told you that the subject property had to obtain an easement from those two properties in order to be able to have access onto the property from McPhillips?
Yeah, I mean, lots of properties need easements. I mean, that could be very feasible that this requires one as well to access. I'm not sure.
Sorry, Mr. Pontanilla, I didn't quite hear that. Can you repeat that, please?
Yes. I wasn't aware that there was an easement there, but it wouldn't surprise me. Many times there are setups between parcels where easements are used. So if it is being used, that could very well be the case. I'm not aware if there is or not.
So, in terms of access to the property, you suggested that there was access to the property from Court Avenue, and I did mention to you that is a lane. and you didn't disagree with me that that was a lane. Would you think that for that type, for a commercial property, that is a proper access to a property such as that, or would it detract from the value of the property?
I mean, it's freshly built in 2021. It's hard to say. It would be conjecture to speculate on property fluctuations that you know.
But
I'm not aware of.
in your opinion, a property facing onto a main street.
Sure. Yes. Visibility is important. Yep. If that's what you want me to, if that's what you're trying to get at, then visibility is definitely a component.
Mr. Pantanilla, I do apologize. I didn't quite understand what you said there at the end. Can you please repeat that?
Visibility is definitely a component. So if that's what you're driving at, then yes, there is reduced visibility, but I have already stated that in my presentation.
And okay, so and then if we're looking at an access from McPhillips and between two properties that are in front of the subject property, and where the subject property had to obtain an easement in order to be able to drive onto the property, would that affect value?
I mean, easements are a setup that's used. I'm not aware if it would necessarily. I mean, yeah, it doesn't have direct access. Perhaps that might deflect, but this is just speculation at this point.
Well, it's not speculation from my point of view. In that the subject property had to obtain an easement in order to be able to access its property, and the access from court side is not speculation on my part because I was there. I saw it. There was a lane that I guess provides access to the subject property. It's not a thoroughway. It's not a street. It's a lane.
I don't disagree.
You don't disagree? Okay, thank you. Now, with respect to page 5 of your presentation, those two are pictures my pictures that you used, and I give you permission to use those pictures. The bottom picture shows part of Tim Hortons, and you can see there are several cars lined up there. That is part of their drive-through, and that is the access. Unfortunately, the picture that I took in this instance, it doesn't show the property on the left, but that is the drive-through from McPhillips Street. And I should also point out to you, would you? Maybe I should word it a little bit different way. Would you agree with me that if the best type of access from McPhillips, there's a median on McPhillips in this area here? Would you agree with me that the best type of access would have access from both north and south of McPhillips?
Is that the best access? If we're talking about the best access, then yeah, you would ideally want to have an entrance and an exit. Then that's.
If I told you that access to McPhillips is the egress from onto McPhillips. When you egress this property, you have to turn right only. You cannot go north. You have to turn south.
Okay, sure.
Would that have an impact on value?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine if it's a little complicated to access the property, that could potentially have an impact.
So we have access and egress from McPhillips, and you're only able to turn one way going south. We have another access that is a lane essentially from Court Avenue, and the subject property had to obtain easements in order to be able to get access to the property, to the subject property. Will those three things affect value of the subject property, of this particular type of property?
Well, if we're talking about the particular subject itself, I would say that there might be an effect that is visible on the subject property. But with that being said, the income value that we had at $654,000 It's not what's under appeal. The appeal was $517,000, which is the market model valuation for it. So we can speculate on the access and the egress and the need to have a complicated versus an easy access to a property. Of course, those matter, but we are talking about this particular subject, and it does look like the market model valuation is in line with what we had for sales for commercial condos.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment. So I actually would like to now review your rent comparables on page 7. So if we look at 1467 Main Street, do you know if that particular property is fronting onto Main, is right on Main Street, or is it behind some properties?
From my understanding, that one's fronted on Main Street, but I'd have to look again to be sure. I mean, these were files that I put together a few weeks back, so I'd have to look at it.
Mr. Pontanella, if I told you that particular property is indeed fronting onto Main Street,
sure.
Would its market value be similar or comparable to the subject property? And we know that it is sitting behind properties that are fronting onto McPhillips. This one is sitting behind where access is, in my opinion, quite limited. Let me just point out something to you. I've like I said, I've been to this property at least once, but I drive down McPhillips quite often. It's very difficult. If I didn't know that this property existed, I wouldn't know that there is such a property on this in this area here. Let's go on to the next property, 490 Hargrave Street. Is it located downtown?
It's on Hargrave.
Is it fronting onto Hargrave?
I believe so.
And I noticed that the leased area is over 20,000 square feet.
Yeah, that's a big one. I was actually looking at that one myself.
It's probably not very comparable.
On that one is what I can say. But you know what? We're not putting a lot of weight on any of these rents because in the end, we are looking at the market model valuation. So we can go through them one by one if you want and pick apart why you think they're not comparable or why you think they don't work. At the end of the day, we're using a market model approach, which uses a direct comparison sales approach. So we're not talking about the income approach anyway. So if you want, yeah, let's go through it. We can go one by one. But I'm not really putting any weight on any of these anyways because we have it as a market model valuation, which is using a price per square foot overall.
Okay, so Mr. Ponte, no, I don't want to belabor the point, but I don't want to go through all of these comparables. But you would agree with me that they're all located right on the street, that they are not located behind other buildings. They're all fronting the streets that they're located on.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, on page 8, it's the same thing, right? A Provence, that's in St. Boniface. That those properties are fronting onto Provence. Is that correct?
The building is on Provence. It fronts Provence. The units themselves might front Provence. They might not, depending on what side they're on. But the building itself is oriented on Provence.
Okay, so now we'll turn to page 9, and we're looking at your market sales.
Yep.
Again, same type of question. 475 Provence. In terms of its location, is it right on Provence or is it behind some buildings?
It's on Provence.
It's in fact it's right on Provence. It's on a corner. It's on the corner of Provence and La Flèche. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
So corner off commercial building probably has a lot more exposure at least from two sides, two streets. 250 Marion Street. Is it fronting Marion or is it behind other buildings?
I want to say it's fronting Marion.
And the other the other buildings are Marion as well, or I guess it's the same property on Marion. So they're all fronting on Marion. And you are correct because I looked it up. They're all fronting Marion. Now, so you use these comparables that on page 9 that front Marion Street in a very busy area of town, and St. Boniface near just right off the Main Street, and where Main Street turns left onto Marion, right in that area. You're saying that these properties are comparable to the subject property that is North McPhillips, nearly very close to almost out of town, where the access and egress is very difficult, where it's hidden behind other buildings. You're saying that these sales are comparable to the subject property.
That is what I'm saying.
Thank you. So if we turn to page 10, I'm assuming that's model driven income approach, and you're not putting a lot of you're not using the income approach. You're using the sales approach in order to arrive at value.
That's correct.
And do you know when the subject property is occupied? When it was occupied?
I believe it would have been. I believe it would have been right around the economic period, but I can't say with certainty. I believe that it would have been around that time frame, but again, I'm not sure with certainty.
So if I told you that the subject property was occupied in around mid-year, almost mid-year of 2021, would that affect the value of the property? It was, and if I told you that it was under construction for part of that year.
Yeah, I mean, if that would have been the case, there may have been an adjustment that could have been put forward in place. But I believe we had a conversation where I asked you about that, and you had told me that it was occupied and it was fully constructed.
Well, it was. I think I mentioned
directly that. I directly asked you that.
But it was occupied if it was occupied in the middle of the year or in May, you were suggesting that an adjustment could have been made in terms of assessment.
There could have been one, yeah. We have the ability if a building is in a shell-like condition or if there's any reasons why we could have, but I asked you specifically if the subject was under construction or if it was completed, and that my understanding was that it was completed.
It was completed, yes, in that year. It was occupied in that year.
I asked you if it was completed by the economic period. I was very clear about that.
Sorry, I maybe I misunderstood. I didn't hear it. I apologize.
Okay. Maybe you did.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sitkowski. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions for the assessor?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moretsky?
Yes, I do have some questions. Page 4, please. Okay, so look at the west-facing view down on the bottom picture.
Okay.
We have Court Avenue there in the bottom right corner. And now our subject property is in building 1021, where is that identified as 1021, correct?
No, it's actually in 2358.
Oh, 2358. Okay, so it's a unit within that building?
I believe so. A commercial
Okay.
condo unit within the building.
So I see a semi-trailer out front of that building. Is that everybody's? You see that too?
I do.
Okay. So on Court Avenue, so if you were to get to that property, is there an approach there in the bottom right corner? Get onto that property?
Well, as I had previously mentioned, when I did my Google Street drive-through, if you want to call it that, using the tools that we have at the office. My initial understanding was that there was a lane that you access from court that then takes you to what I believe was the location of the subject property. The appellant has informed us that there is an easement that I wasn't aware of that you access from McPhillips. And I'm still not aware if that lane is usable for the public or if it's some kind of a private lane for the parcel beside it. I'm not sure. Those are questions you'd have to ask him.
Excuse me. Would you mind me clarifying something? Because I think I misunderstood what you had said. In terms of this picture that you were asking questions about. Would you mind if I clarify something?
Go ahead, Mr. Sikowski.
Thank you. So we were looking at the picture, and I think you were asking if the subject property is located in the building that's shown here as 1021.
No, he's clarified that it was in 2358.
But it doesn't show here. 2358. Okay, sorry. I apologize. I didn't quite hear that.
Yes. Mr. Moretsky, any additional questions?
Yes, I have a few more. The area for your comps was your comparable sales. Maybe you can help me out what page that's on.
On page 9.
Page 9. Yeah, thank you. This subject property is McPhillips Street, north in the city, correct?
Correct.
I'm just curious as to why you use these St. Boniface properties for all 4 comparables. There's quite a distance away from the subject area, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. No, that's a fair observation. Well, the issue with this is that this property has been PUC'd, or the parcel use code on it is commercial condo. There actually aren't any commercial condos that are within the neighborhood near the subject. And in fact, there aren't very many commercial condos outside of downtown, and in St. Boniface, it's quite rare, I guess, to come across a commercial condo unit that's been labeled as such. So for that reason, for this particular appeal cycle, I had to use sales that were that are of the same property type, but that aren't necessarily within the same neighborhood. So we actually do have some sales that are within the neighborhood, but they are post-reference, so I didn't include them, and I'm not going to speak to them now. But we do have some sales from there that are post-reference. And it led me to believe that the 517 was a reasonable value that we had on there. As well, if you look, the sale from 1989, the sale from the first comparable, 475 Provencher, the year built on that one was 1989. And then for 250 Marion Street, the year built on those is 2016. And I would like to remind you that the subject property is 2021. So it's a much newer build as well, or a fairly newer build, at least from the 2016.
Okay, thank you. The next question is on the same page. The sale price per square foot. Those are time adjusted for April of 21.
So, yep, I pulled them from a time adjusted.
Time adjusted.
Yeah.
Okay. And page 17.
Yep.
Page 17. That's the unit.
That's correct.
Now there's stairs over there, a staircase over on the left upper corner. So, but there's just one floor on this unit.
I believe there's one floor on this unit. Yes, we have it as. Let me just check again to make sure there's one premise. Yes, we have it as a one-story, one premise.
But there is a second floor above or below this unit. Would there be? Yeah.
Bear in mind that might have an access to another unit to the side of it. I'm not sure. Like, I'm only going on the information I have in front of me, and we don't have any second floor for the subject.
Okay. And on your income approach, I know you're not putting much weight on it, but I was just curious.
Sure.
your comparables for your income approach on the rent are all quite a bit lower than the rent per square foot that you use, $20. Would
Yep.
that be a fair observation?
It would be. Perhaps another observation to make too would be the ages of some of these, that the effective year builds on them. For example, for my rent comparables that were within the same market region, those fluctuated from 1978 at the lower end up to 1991. Subject is 2021. And then for the commercial condo rent comparables, those are a little closer because I did use the information we had at 147 Provencher, because again, commercial condos are a bit of a rarity as a parcel unit. And the other thing to mention too is that a lot of commercial condos, from my experience, they are used in an owner occupancy manner. So even if we did have some other commercial condos, unless it's not a net lease, and we can't really put much weight on it. So that could be actually answering your previous question as well as to why we choose certain information, even if it's not directly across the street from the subject property. That's because sometimes we just can't rely on that information to be accurate. But with that being said, again, we aren't even putting forward the income approach, because in the end, none of that matters when you go on the market model approach. And the market model approach has it at a much lower value than what the income valuation is, regardless.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moretsky. Mr. Pontanilla, you've used two different approaches, market model and income. So why do you prefer to use the market model versus the income?
Well, I don't prefer it. First of all, this is just the department that was done. I received the file. That's how we put it forward. So this wasn't a decision made on my part. This is just what it had gone out at $517,000. So speaking to the general idea of it, I believe that because once again, commercial condos, my understanding is that the model sometimes has a hard time putting a value on it that is reasonable when you look at it from a sales perspective, because the income approach does use, there are many factors that go into the model, but primarily the size and the age of the building. Those sometimes tend to drive the rental rates that are being applied. So there's economies of scale. The smaller that the units are, the higher that the rental rates are, and then it scales up as the areas increase. The rental rates then start to adjust accordingly. And so if you'll notice, for a lot of these, this one is a little different. It's a 2,000 square foot commercial condo. It's a little bit more of a retail size commercial condo, let's say. But even if you look at my information that I put in from Provencher itself, you'll note the ranges from 870-ish square feet at the lower end up to about 1,100 square feet at the higher end. You'll note some of the sales from 475 Provencher and from 250 Marion. The sale from 475 was for 370 square feet. So because the areas are a lot smaller, sometimes the model has a difficult time applying a rental rate on it that's acceptable. And so it gives it a very high rental rate. And so that's why the model then, it has the two approaches, and it is preferable for the department, from my understanding again, it is preferable for commercial condos in specific to then use the market model, because then we use the sales. It's just a little difficult. Commercial condos it is the type of property that can be used both in a residential manner as well as in a commercial manner because of its size and typically the way it's laid out. They're not necessarily laid out as retail spaces, true retail spaces per se. And so that's why in this instance, the direct comparable, or the market model as we call it, which ultimately is the sales approach to analysis, for commercial condos, that's why it's preferable.
Okay, so for your market value approach then and the sale of the sales, the subject property comes out at $258.50 a square foot. So what properties are you just comparing these against other commercial condo properties?
Yeah, that's it. Because again, go ahead. You can finish.
Pardon me?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't know if you had more for your question. I kind of jumped in early. You can finish if you want.
No, I'm just trying to understand in your market sales approach that you're comparing the subject against. Are you just looking at commercial condos?
Yes, I am. And once again, because I'm trying to compare apples to apples, so to speak. And so I want to use commercial condos in my approach because the subject is a commercial condo. And I wanted to just put forward some market sales information so that you get a somewhat of an idea of what goes into the inputs, which then spits out the $258.50 per square foot that the model generated for the subject property. So it's not always just, of course, there are many other factors that go in, market regions, you know, streets, frontage. There are many property characteristics that go into the model, but area and rental rates being, you know, like some primary driving factors, it gives the model a little bit of a challenge with the commercial condos.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I have no additional questions. So, Mr. Sitkowski, you,
Madam Chairperson, I have another question, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, Mr. Pantanilla, the building that the subject property is located in, are you aware that it's still under construction?
I wasn't aware.
You were not aware. Now, if you were aware that the building is still under construction, not all of the units are completed there, would that affect value of the subject property? And I'm asking you, and the reason why I'm asking you that is that if there are construction vehicles on the site and other type of vehicles on the site related to construction, would that impede a potential customer using that particular property?
You know, Madam Chair, I find some of these questions to be very speculative in nature. I can't speculate onto if a truck is parked on the parcel, if there's going to be a detraction in value. So I'm not really sure how to answer that.
Okay,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Sitkowski.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Sitkowski, you can begin your presentation, but I may have to interrupt partway. One of our panel members may have to excuse himself for a couple minutes, but you can start, and I might just need to cut you off at one point, but we'll make sure you get your time. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So I want to start off by saying that this building where this subject property is located in was an appeal in front of this board. I believe it was in December, and the value that we were appealing was the 2023 value, and but the circumstances have not changed. This building, as I was alluding to, is located in the rear of behind two properties that are located on McPhillips. It is also located behind another property that's fronting Cork Avenue, and it is still under construction. The building. There are several units there. I believe there are only 4 units that have been finished. The rest of the units in this building are still unfinished. And I also wanted to point out another factoid is that a group of people, they got together to build this particular property, and each person in this group would take a section of this property as their own condo unit, and that's why this particular building is a condo. And when this property was appealed, and I apologize, my pages are not numbered. I guess on page 4 is the Board of Revision order.
Mr. Sitkowski, if I can just remind you that we're not dealing with the 2023 assessment. We're dealing with this one.
Yes, I understand that, but as I mentioned at the beginning, the circumstances are identical with respect to the 2023 appeal and this particular appeal.
So why don't you just relate them to this one appeal that's before this board? And we don't know what factors were considered by the other board.
Well,
so we can just concentrate on this one.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I actually presented the arguments for the 2023 appeal, and as I mentioned already, the circumstances have not changed. If you start off on page 1 of the appeal, you'll see the picture of the property. The subject unit is located in the right-hand corner on the main floor, and if you look at this property, there are 4 or 5 units up on the second floor that are not finished, that are not completed. And I included some pictures in this brief showing that these units are not completed yet. There's still some major work that needs to be completed. For example, drywalling, flooring, HVAC systems. All of those items still need to be completed, and as a result, there is still construction traffic related to those units that are not completed, and still quite a bit of construction traffic. In this instance, all you see in this picture, in the front picture here, there's a construction bin in front of the main floor unit that's on the far left side of the building. If we turn to page 3, is the workup. I'm using the income approach to value because that is the approach that was used for the 2023 appeal, and we don't see any reason why we should not be using the income approach to value for this appeal. And I'm using the assessor is using $20 per square foot with a vacancy shortfall at $7 and a capitalization rate of 5.55%. We're on the other hand are using $16 per square foot, vacancy shortfall $8 and a cap rate of 6.5%. These are the parameters that the board based on the circumstances that existed at that time. These are the parameters that the board used to decide on lowering the value of the entire building. And I should also point out to you that the $16 doesn't differ from the rates that the assessor uses in his brief. His rates are a little bit higher, but as I mentioned to you, there are certain circumstances for this particular building as to why we feel that the rates should be lower and why the capitalization rate should be higher. Because I have no idea why somebody would want to build a building in this area. I certainly, as an investor, would have doubts about building a building in this location. And as I mentioned to you, there are certain problems with respect to this location. A, easement. B, the buildings behind other buildings. C, the access and egress to this building is terrible. And I should also point out too that quite often I go home down McPhillip Street, and if I didn't know that this building existed, I would miss it. Because there's Tim Hortons in front of that building, and then there's Part Source in front of that building, and there is an access that I mean, if I'm driving at 60 per hour, I don't have time to turn my head to look at that building. I would miss it. Even if I wanted to go to that office, that dentist office, without knowing where it is, I'd probably have to go around several times to try to access the dentist office. So in short, we're asking for a value of $419,000 based on those parameters that I was talking about. And if we turn to again, I do apologize that this is not numbered, but page 6. Which starts off with the interior shots of the building. This is page 6. Is you'll see that there's the demising walls are not completed, the ceiling's not completed, the flooring's not completed. This is on the second floor, and as known a little bit about construction, I know that construction vehicles need access in order to be able to complete the premises. And if we're talking about vehicle access and sometimes you need access for many vehicles to access these premises. If you have delivery vehicles, if you have contractors' vehicles parked in a parking lot, that leaves you much less room for people who want to access the dentist's office. The following picture again shows how incomplete the upper floor is. This area is drywall and has access to various rooms, but you see the ceiling's not complete and the flooring is not complete. The picture following that is, again, these are pictures that I've taken when we were appealing the entire building. You can see the drive on the right hand side is the Tim Hortons, and there's a drive through there. So you have to drive through. There's this access road from McPhillips in between the picture on the right, which is Tim Hortons, and there's also that parts store on the left, which unfortunately is not shown in the picture. What is also shown is the building nearer the subject property with the white wall. That is the building that's facing Port Street, and just before that building is the lane. You could see. There's a yellow in front of the stores. In front of those cars that are parked. There's a white car. There are two white cars and a black car and another vehicle. You'll see. Looks like somebody drove there, but that's part of the lane that access this that one can access the subject property with from Court Street. So in short, we're asking for the subject property to be reduced to $419,000, based on the fact that this is the location of the subject property is a terrible location in my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sitkowski. Mr. Pontonia, do you have any questions?
I have none, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moretsky, do you have any questions?
Yeah, your photos on page, I guess it is 7, 8 of the second floor there. When did you take those?
I took those in December, but I did talk to the owner, the owner of that unit, the dentist unit, one of the owners. Like, it's a husband and wife that own that building. I just talked to him last night and I asked him if there is still construction going on the site, and he said yes, there is.
Okay, and do you have any rent comparables to support your unit pricing that you use there?
I'm relying mainly on the comparables that the assessor uses, but taking into consideration the building's location.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
Just a couple with respect to the rent that you've indicated. This unit is 100% owner occupied, I believe you said, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it is a dental office or a medical office?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the comps that you're relying on, the rental comps, are those prepared by the city assessment department and their presentation? Is that right?
Well, yes. When I looked at the brief, the assessor's brief, and when we thought about the previous appeal, we thought that $16 a square foot for this particular property was probably just around the value that we were thinking of.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no additional questions.
Thank you.
So thank you. Mr. Pontonia, do you desire summation?
No summation, I'm okay, thanks.
Mr. Sitkowski?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes item 1 on our agenda. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Before we begin, we'll get you sworn in.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Smith, please state your full name.
Trevor Smith.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me just get to that presentation. Okay, we are now moving to item number 2 on our docket. That's file 22-4837, 1265 Jefferson Avenue. So, Mr. Pontanilla, when you are ready, please.
I can begin, and because we're speaking of the 2021 and 2023 reference years, some of the particulars might change from presentation to presentation, but the overall presentation, from my end, at least in regards to the general characteristics, I would ask that what I present now just gets carried forward to 2023.
Of course.
All right, so up next we have file 22-4837. The roll number is 0500-943-3750. The address is 1265 Jefferson Avenue, or 1265, sorry. The 2021 assessment has gone out at $9,960,000. So this is it is my understanding that this was a supplemental assessment that went out. And so that's what we're speaking of now. And so this property is being used as a commercial, it's labeled, sorry, as a commercial regional neighborhood shopping center. We have some actual and effective years that vary from 1981 to 2012. We do have a total leasable area on file of 61,894 square feet. And so on page 2, I have 2 images that I've included. So page 2 is the current parcel as it's currently being laid out and as we're currently discussing it. So you'll note there the peculiar shape of the parcel itself. And the reason being is because the section on the top left-hand corner of the parcel, that section that's now missing, that section is being shown as what it used to look like previously with the red line that goes all the way around the parcel. That section at the top was sold and redeveloped. And so the parcel was then, that piece of land was then cut from the parcel itself. And that's why now 1265 Jefferson has what's remaining. So I just wanted to sort of clarify that that's what we're currently speaking about. And then on page 3, I do have an overhead view of the subject property. So it looks to be where you can see its orientation there on Jefferson Avenue. And then on page 3, or on page 4, sorry, I do have a north-facing view and a west-facing view of the subject property. And then I have some images that I've included in my brief. So I have the Google Street View images from the 2019 map overlay. So it shows the layout of the regional neighborhood shopping center there. You can see when you drive in and the different commercial retail units that are set up there. Then on page 6 and going on to page 7, it's the same. You can just see where there's a Lucky supermarket there. And then there's what appears to be a section of units that are built off to the side of that Lucky's, and taking us to the other anchor, which is the Dollarama there. And this is the current usage of the split parcel subdivision on page 8. So you can see where the piece of land was sold there, and then the unit was subdivided and was improved into a multifamily housing unit there. So you can see that it's now, I believe, to be a multi-family house unit or an apartment block. Maybe a condo block, I'm not sure, but it's a multi-family housing. And then so we don't have any requests for income information as this was a supplemental that went out. We have no sales history for the subject property and we have no leases on file. So I've included 2 pages of rental comparables. So these rental comparables were all searched using the CMRNS puck. So I tried to once again compare apples to apples. And then there's a variety of different units there. Some of them are used in a retail manner. Some of them are used as a restaurant. And then believe I have one or two that are the anchors or that are comparable to what the anchor units are at the subject itself. And we do have a range there on rental rates, ranging anywhere from the lower end at around $10, $10.41 at the lower end, and then taking us as high as what looks to be $26, I guess, depending on size and usage. And then on page 12, we do have the income value approach. We do have a summary of all the different premises that we have on the income stream. So we don't have to go premise by premise, but it is worthy to know we have about 16 premises that are on the income stream, which gives us a total leasable area of 61,894 square feet and a total potential rent of $747,082. From there, we have applied modeled vacancies of a 4% loss for vacancy, a 2% expense rate, and a $8 shortfall per square foot, which then brings us to our net operating income of $683,049. And then from there, we have a modeled cap rate of 6.85%, which then gives us our value of $9,960,000. Actually, I want to clarify that I would like to take back the modeled cap rate. Typically, they are modeled cap rates, so I'm confident in saying that. However, this file was reviewed by a senior colleague of mine. That's why the supplemental went out when all the work was done on the replot. And I would have to, at least for the 2021 year, I'd have to verify that was a modeled cap rate. But nonetheless, the cap rate used for the subject is 6.85%, and the total value is $9,960,000. On page 13, there is a summary there of the valuation that's on there that we just spoke about. And then on page 14, we do have some cap rate information. So this is a neighborhood shopping center. So we do have a column for that under the retail section there. If we look at neighborhood shopping centers, we do have a low cap rate of 6.15 and a high cap rate of 9.4. And then the 20th and 80th percentile for neighborhood strip malls is between 7.15% and 7.3%. So that seems to be where the majority of neighborhood strip malls are. Or neighborhood shopping centers, sorry, I should say. And then on page 15, we do have some Municipal Assessment Act excerpts that relate to the work we do here. And then on page 16, and taking us to the end of the brief, is the subject's income and expense information. And then as well as this was in the year, in relation to the 2020 overall assessment cycle, I have included the addenda that we have on some cap rate rebuttal information. And I believe that is my presentation. Oh, on page 35, we do have, this is the property assessment notice for 2021. And that just shows the value there of $9,960,000. And I believe that shows that after the supplement was done, my understanding, the value had stayed at $9,960,000. Well, in any case, this would be the assessment notice for the subject. So that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pontinia. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Given workload at the city, is it fair to say that have you had time to inspect the property?
Personally inspected, no, I haven't.
Okay, thank you. And the subject property location, so it is 1265 Jefferson. I don't see a specific map here, but is it fair to say that it's well within the Maples neighborhood?
That's correct.
Okay. And the photos of the property, there was 2 years of construction mentioned, 1981 and 2012. So 2012, is one specific pad site that was constructed. I believe you can confirm that. That would be the 1265, the Asia City pad site fronting on Jefferson. So that's the part that's limited to 2012 construction.
I believe so.
Take the call now, Madam Chair.
Yes, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll just take a 10-minute recess or however long Mr. Moretsky needs. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. We'll resume with our discussion of item number 2 on our agenda. And we were at the point where Mr. Smith was asking questions of the assessor. So Mr. Smith, you can continue. And thank you very much for your patience.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to resume, skipping forward to page number 12 here, the income valuation summary for the property. So I did the math dividing the total potential rent by the leasable area, and we come to $12.07 a square foot as an average rental rate, versus the in-place $11.01. That potential rent. This is model driven, correct?
So I believe that, yes, I want to say yes on it with just the caveat that a senior colleague of mine had worked on the replot and had done the majority of the work on this file. And when I did the review, it seemed to me that everything seemed to fall in line with that. So yes, I do want to say it's model driven. Okay. I would have noticed myself had there been something else.
Thank you. And it would be fair to say that that projected rent is higher than the in-place rent for the subject property as of the valuation date.
Sorry, Trevor. What do you? Can you rephrase the question or?
Certainly. So the potential rent of $747,000 and $747,082 is higher than the actual in-place net rental rate for the subject property.
I'd have to look at the rental rate in place. If you just give me 1 second to agree to that. We had. So we have year to date 661,748.65. So it's slightly higher at 747. That's correct.
Okay.
It is higher. That's correct.
All right. Thank you. I'll jump back to page number 10 here for the rent comparables. And I'm assuming that this was probably just potentially an oversight here, but the 6 of the comparables that are shown here are actually units in the subject property itself, the Jefferson.
Sure.
Just an oversight, I'm imagining.
Yeah, that would have been an oversight, and actually, I should have caught that because the roll number doesn't get generated when that happens as well. Seeing as how it's the subject roll number there, so yeah, that's correct. Yep. Okay,
so those obviously can't be used as comparables for the subject.
Sure.
Okay. So there's no other lease comparables that are on Jefferson. All of the ones on Jefferson are the subject itself.
Yes, that looks to be correct.
Okay. Again, looking at the comparables here, there are, and bear with me for just a moment, I want to make sure that similar to Mr. Pontanilla, I'll try not to cover the same ground twice, so many of my questions will be applicable to the second appeal as well, and I'll try not to cover the same ground twice. So just to look again at the rent comparables here, and their applicability to the subject property. So the first four comparables, 2230 McPhillips. That is located directly on the southeast corner of Leela and McPhillips. Is that correct?
I believe so, that's correct.
Okay, and the tenancies in that particular center are national tenancies such as Shoppers Drug Mart, PetSmart, A&W, Magic Cuts, M&M Meats, Enterprise Rental, Manitoba government has a unit there. Is that accurate?
I mean, my tenants that I chose aren't, with the exception of, I guess, 223010, that's a Pizza, 2230 McPhillips, a Freshie, 2230 Palatine. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I won't dispute that characterization.
Okay. So we have national covenants there. And so visibility wise, you're located right on the corner of Leela and McPhillips, across from Garden City Shopping Center and the big box stores on the north side of Leela. That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay. 2188 McPhillips. This is located immediately across McPhillips from Garden City Shopping Center.
I believe so.
And that particular center has tenants national tenants such as Pita Pit, Singletons, Sherwin-Williams, and then some local tenancies, insurance, supplements, pizza, restaurant, takeout pizza. Is that accurate?
Yep, that's accurate.
Okay. Moving down, 963 Henderson Highway. So not in the immediate area, but this would be the Northdale Shopping Center. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it is grocery anchored with Sobeys as the grocery anchor, Manitoba Liquor Commission, Pet Value, RBC, Rexall Drugs, etc.
I don't have that list in front of me, but if that falls under the list of tenants, then sure, I'll go with that.
Okay, and I don't want to belabor this point. I just have to ask the question. So I understand you not have it in front of you. 1421 Henderson. This is a just bear with me for just a moment here. This is also a grocery anchored shopping center. Oh, pardon me. Next door to the grocery anchored shopping center, correct? Safeway, Tim's, Boston Pizza, Popeyes, WRHA Access Center. Is that accurate?
Well, the tenant I have here is for a Dollarama, so if they're anchored there, then that might be the case. I'm not sure about the other tenants.
Okay. 2211 McPhillips Street at the bottom of that chart there, Garden City Plaza. So this is located essentially on site of the Garden City Shopping Center, correct? With Boston Pizza, Assiniboine Credit Union as tenants?
I believe so.
Okay. And you can access that without exiting the parking lot for Garden City Shopping Center, correct? Okay. Where are we here? Page 11, 843 Leela. This is the Garden City Square Shopping Center, located on the north side of Leela, across from Garden City Shopping Center again, with big box stores and national tenancies such as Home Depot, Marshalls and HomeSense, Manitoba Liquor Commission, Staples, Scotiabank, etc.
I believe that's correct.
Okay. And then finally, the last one, 2136 McPhillipson. Again, my apologies for going through this in detail, but we have to get the point across. 2136 McPhillip Street. This is a strip center. It is actually grocery anchored with Superstore as the grocery anchor, with Cambrian Credit Union, Mary Brown's, Ultracuts, Pet Value, Little Caesars, etc. as national tenancies.
I believe so.
Okay, so these properties, would it be fair to say that they would have greater traffic flow, greater visibility, and be in superior locations than the subject property?
That's fair to say.
Okay. And my last question, just quickly, two questions, I guess. There's no specific cap rate comparables that are presented by the city, I gather?
Other than our usual information, that's correct.
Right. And looking at the usual information, the 20th to 80th percentile for neighborhood shopping centers is indicating between 7.15 and 7.3 for cap rates. And the city model has projected a 6.85, I believe, correct?
I want to say that I believe this is a CMRNS, and it's a regional neighborhood shopping center. I believe I'm just double checking that to confirm right now.
Regional would be larger than...
I guess, yeah, we have it as a CMRNS, but I guess, yeah, regional, if it's on Jefferson.
Okay.
It's tough to say because we do have it as a CMRNS, as it's PUC, but yeah, regional wouldn't necessarily indicate perhaps a more prime location, let's call it, than on Jefferson. So if we're going by the neighborhood shopping, as you're pointing out, then yes, you're correct. The 20th and 80th percentile would fall between 7.15 and 7.3. However, but you know what, we can't do regional. Okay, yeah, 7.15 and 7.3, sure.
Those are all my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
My questions with respect to the cap rate, and you went through it in some detail, but with respect to the cap rate of 6.85, is there anything in particular about this subject property that would bring it below the 20th percentile in the range?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, my review didn't show anything necessarily that would jump out at me. One might argue that perhaps the one pad site that was developed there, that we have it for 2012, that might have pulled the computations that are in the model and had an effect on the overall modeled cap rate that was being produced. So there is a relationship between the year built, as well as a relationship between sides, but a year built is one of the driving factors for how cap rates get modeled. So I can speculate that could be the case, that the cap rate came in underneath. We have to remember as well that the 20th and 80th percentile, that is the majority of these subjects, but it's not all of the subjects. So if we look at even at the neighborhood shopping center from the lower to the higher end, 6.15 is the lower end, 9.4 is the very high end. 6.85, I mean, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility from that. But when you look at it from a different perspective of the 20th and 80th percentile, then it seems like it's a little bit outside of that range. But again, there is a whole portfolio of cap rates that are used. So I want to say that I think maybe the 2012 pad site might be pulling, or it might be affecting the modeled cap rate that's being generated. But I can't be 100% sure on that.
Okay. Thank you. The other question I had was with respect to the modeled income at page 12. all of those rents per square foot, that income stream is all model driven.
I believe so, yes. I do want to say that it was all model driven.
And it is just with respect to the rents in place. There's no extra income or supplementary market income from signage or anything like that.
No, this is just be from the rental rate. So everything you see on the stream there, that's what would be computed into the overall assessment value. You'll notice underneath the capitalized value that we have no value for additional land, additional building, or any other adjustments. So that tells you right there that the model is using just the rates in place for each of the premises and then going through the income stream on it, the pro forma.
Okay, thank you very much. That's my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Mr. Moretsky?
Yes, I have one question. You had mentioned in-place rent or actual rent being $661,000. Where did you get that figure from, please?
Yep. So if we go down, that was pulled from the subject's 2017 mailer, as we are speaking about the 2020 reference date. So if you go to page 18, I believe, of my brief, you might have to turn it sideways because I do put them in so that they're a little clearer to see when you do then flip it sideways. And then you'll see under the column labeled year to date actual. So that would be the actual income that was received for 2017. And if you zoom in, you can use the tools at the top to zoom in. You can then see the value of 661,748.65.
It's on page 18.
That's on page 18. That's correct, of my brief.
Okay. Rental revenue 661,748.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, that's the only question I had. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. And I just have a minor question, and it relates to your page 12.
Okay.
I don't know if it's minor. I just need some clarification on this. You have a capitalized value of $9,971,000.
Yep.
An estimated value of $9,960,000.
There is a bit of a variation.
Any adjustments for land or building or anything else? So why are the numbers different?
That's a great question, actually. Yeah, that might have even escaped my eye when I was reviewing it because the values were so close. Well, again, that's why I want to stipulate that a senior colleague of mine had done a review and done some work. So you'll notice that while the values are separate, 9,971,000, and then we have the rounded value of 9,960,000. I want to say that there was a review that was done, and that at some point, once the review was done, perhaps there was maybe a bit of a fluctuation. So maybe at one of the stages in the review, the value was put on almost as an override, I guess, to just try to get it to what the capitalized value was that it was originally before any of the adjustments were made. But I didn't do the original work on the replot, so it's very difficult for me to say exactly where the difference is. But that's a good eye. You did catch that that minor difference between the two. Yeah, I mean, it's close enough that they're practically the same. And in fact, the value we're putting forward is slightly lower than what the capitalized value would be. So I guess I have that going for myself, but I don't really have an exact answer for that.
No, thank you. It was just a curiosity. Okay, I actually didn't even catch that myself, to be honest. The values are so close to each other. Yeah. Okay, I have no additional questions. So, Mr. Smith, we're ready for your presentation, please.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So, property we're dealing with is of course 1265 Jefferson Avenue. This is a neighborhood shopping center. It's not a regional shopping center. It's not of the size or in a location that would qualify it as a regional shopping center. Points to keep in mind as I go forward here are location with regard to rental rates as well as value, and covenant. When we look at the subject property here, and a lot of this is driven by its particular location, we're not dealing with a lot of national tenancies. In fact, nearly all of the mall is local tenancies. We do have two that are not, those being Dollarama, as well as the small Asia City quick service restaurant on the pad site that was built in 2012, a small component of the property, but the remainder of the property, including the grocery anchor, are local tenancies. Now, when you look at those tenancies in comparison to national tenancies, as we were discussing and looking at some of the city comparables there, as an investor, when you're looking at potential purchase of a property, one of the items that you look at is the solidity, essentially, of the income stream and the covenant behind each of those tenants. So when you have local tenants, their covenant is essentially themselves and their business. Essentially, when you look at a national tenant, such as, well, pick any number of them, you're looking at a much stronger covenant, which essentially provides you with much greater certainty of receiving your rent, much greater certainty of receiving the actual income that you're basing your purchase of that property upon. So those are things to keep in mind when we run through this property here. So subject property is located within the Maples area itself on Jefferson. It's located just south of the intersection with Adsum on Jefferson, fronting on Jefferson. It was built in 1981, with the exception of the single pad site, that being the Asia City franchise. And it is zoned C3 commercial corridor. It is a obviously neighborhood shopping center. Sits on 4.5 acres. We have description of the property beginning on page 4 and running through page number 5. I'm not going to run through that. We do have photos here for you to see. The interiors of the units vary fairly widely. Some of them are quite dated, and some of them have been redone in recent times. So you get a sense of that in the photos here. A couple of exteriors on page number 6. You can see the Lucky Supermarket over there on the left, that being the grocery anchor. Now, again, consider this as an investment. You're looking at Lucky Supermarket versus the covenant that you would get with a Safeway or Sobeys or Co-op or a grocery anchor of that nature. Again, further exteriors on page 7. There's a little setback area in the corner of the structure that has tenancies around kind of I'll call it a courtyard. These have proven somewhat challenging to lease in the past, and they do draw typically lower rents as well, given their location in the building itself. Further exteriors on page 8, and then we get inside. So Lucky Supermarket being shown on page number 9. You can see the build out there, somewhat different than a modern grocery store than some of the other tenancies. As we go through here, you can see the insurance company, the surgical center. We have the nail salon, Dollarama, photo of the interior there, and you can see some of the other units in the photos there. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's only photos of some of the properties. The site is shown on page number 14, and again, the location is shown on page 15. Now, if we take this location here on Jefferson, yes, it's on Jefferson, but Jefferson is not Portage Avenue or St. Mary's or Pembina Highway or Henderson Highway, things of that nature, right? So you have to keep that in mind when you're looking at comparables in comparison to the subject property. This is located within the neighborhood and serves that area essentially, versus having a lot of drive-by traffic as you would have on McPhillips and Leela, etc. So let's move forward to the valuation. Page number 18, I give you the in-place leases for the subject property as of the valuation date. The actual, as of the valuation date, your actual rent would be $681,756. This is because there was one tenant that had an uptick in rent between the end of that reporting on in the addenda versus the valuation date. So I made the upward adjustment, comes to $681,756. You can see the supermarket is in at $8.50 a square foot for 26,000 square feet. And then we have rents ranging from $11 a square foot, a lot in the 12 and 13 range, up to $15 per square foot, with the exception of the Asia City pad site, which is at $25 per square foot. So that gives us an average of $11.01 per square foot when you do the math. Let's move forward to the comparables. So what I tried to do in listing the comparables here is identify properties that would be as comparable as possible. So properties that are not necessarily on your main thoroughfares, such as Pembina or Henderson or McPhillips, but properties that are more neighborhood oriented. And I also tried to illustrate similar type of grocery stores and the rents that they achieve. So if you look at my first four comparables there, these are all essentially grocery stores, one of them being a Giant Tiger. 1099 St. Mary's, this is located at the corner of Dunkirk and St. Mary's. It's an older shopping center there, built in, I believe, in the 70s, anchored by a local Family Foods. And they're achieving a rent of just under $10 per square foot there for that grocery store. Giant Tiger at $8.50 on Regent, better location. Then we have another local center in the St. James area, Sturgeon Creek Food Fair, getting $12 per square foot there as of 2016. And finally, Sun Valley Foods in Gateway, so that being north of Chief Peguis, so certainly more of a neighborhood-centered center, getting $9.50 a square foot. So that's kind of the range you're seeing for your non-branded grocery anchor in an area that's similar, very similar to the subject. Moving on, we've got a lot of comps here. I don't want to run through them one by one, but again, what I've done is try and select properties that are more neighborhood oriented and would produce similar rents because of their situation, etc., as the subject property. So we run through these rents. You can see they range from that kind of $11 a square foot range up to $14.50 a square foot. The properties that are indicated here are well located. Just for example, 1875 Pembina, this is just north of the Bishop Grandin interchange on the west side. 1501 Gateway we discussed. 271 Grassy is on the corner of La Jamodier. 1031 Autumnwood is located right within Windsor Park. That's actually quite a good comp. It's at the corner of Autumnwood and Cottonwood, if you're familiar with that. 20 Island Shore is also a local shopping center that services the Island Lakes area. 1290 Kenaston, more of a premier site, just north of, it's north of the Kenaston and McGillivray Power Center area. So it's not in that area, but it's somewhat proximate to it, and it is on Kenaston. It does drive lower rents than in those in the power center node, but you're looking at $14 a square foot there, very comparable to some of the rents that we're achieving here. 1436 Corridon, well located. So that's the type of rents that we see as being comparable to the subject property. And if you run through them, again, the range I'm seeing now, we run from $10 up to about $14 per square foot. When you compare that to the subject property, we have rents that are in the $11 up to $15 per square foot, essentially. The exception being the supermarket, which we've discussed. It falls well in line with the comps. And then the rent for the pad site is $25. That's fine. It's a new build. They're achieving that. We're certainly happy to recognize that. So we believe the in-place rents are representative of what the subject property should earn on the market. In addition, if you are an investor and you're looking at a purchase of this property, these are the rents that you're getting. You're not getting an estimated rent based on what other centers in other locations may be achieving. This is what you're actually purchasing. So the rent of $683,628 is certainly supported by the market. Let's move forward in the valuation to the expense side. We're in agreement with a vacancy rate of 4%. You can see that at the top of page 20. The expense allowance, each of you has heard extensively from me on this. I'm not going to run through it in detail. We have applied an overall 5% non-recoverable allowance in our analysis for the subject property. And you can see the detail behind that. Shortfall, we're not in disagreement either, and we can skip forward to the capitalization rate. Now, I did have some discussion regarding this. Obviously, we have a shopping center that is within the neighborhood. It has dominantly local tenancies, including the grocery anchor, and does not have other supportive retail around it. Each of these factors does have an influence on the cap rate that an astute investor would be willing to apply to the subject. In addition, if you look at the city's cap rate chart, the 20th to 80th percentile indicate between 7.15 and 7.3 for a cap rate for neighborhood shopping centers. I've already discussed at length here the situation of the subject property with regard to local tenancies, its location, etc. It's not going to fall below the 20th percentile, certainly in an investor's eyes. Looking at our cap rate study shown on page 22, we have three comparables to show you. None of these are necessarily grocery anchored shopping centers, but they are all indicative of what investors were paying for quality retail properties as investment properties as of the valuation date. So we have one right in Osborne Village, 130 Osborne, 435 Stradbrook. Obviously, this is strip retail with some on-site parking, 7.5% cap rate as of 2018. Number 2, Donald, transacting in 2016 at a cap rate of 7%. Now this is on the southbound side of Donald, and was has been long ago converted into a retail center. You can see the tenancies there. Cap rate there of 7%, and then another one located on Osborne at a cap rate of 7.4% in 2016. So that's the cap rate range that we're seeing that would be somewhat applicable to the subject property. Those are not grocery anchored shopping centers necessarily, but there really were very very few to no trades of those in the marketplace. And then in comparing them to the subject, they would likely have national covenants for grocery anchor, etc. So we have applied a cap rate of 7.25% in our analysis. This is summarized on page 23. And you can see the potential in place, well, not the potential rent, that's the actual in place rents according to the leases, 4% vacancy, 5% expense allowance, shortfall of $7.50 a square foot. And then we've applied the cap rate of 7.25, giving us a market value of $8,320,000. And if you flip forward to the addenda, starting on page A5, you can see the local nature of the tenancies for the subject. That is my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Pontinia, do you have any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moretsky, do you have any questions?
Yes, you had an actual in place of 681,786, according to the leases that were listed, correct?
That's correct.
However, in the city's brief, he had supplied income statements there, and that came out to 661,000 approximately. So what do you believe is the discrepancy of 20,000 due to?
So I'm not sure if I addressed that or not, Mr. Moretsky. I went through the leases for the subject property as of the valuation date, and I don't recall which tenant it was, but or tenants, but there was a couple that had a jump in rental rate between that end of that reporting period. So your information from the city and myself with regard to the income statement is as of the end of 2017. And our valuation date is April 1, 2018. So I went through the leases to determine if there was any change between the end as well and the valuation date, and made the appropriate adjustments. So there was a slight jump there with a couple of tenants.
Understood. Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
No, I think that my question has been answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I have no additional questions either. Mr. Pontinia, do you desire summation?
No summation desired. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
No, thank you.
Okay, so that concludes item number 2 on our agenda. Let's move to item number 3 on our agenda, file number 22-4838. Mr. Pontinia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So up next we have it's the same properties. So as previously mentioned, the majority of my comments I'd ask that they be carried forward.
Yes, of course.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. And so we have file 22-4838 currently in front of us. The roll number is 0500-943-3750. The address is 1265 Jefferson Avenue, and we are now speaking of the 2023 assessment year. As of April 1st, 2021, for a reference date, has gone out at $10,208,000. So the majority of our characteristics under the property description remain the same. Highlights, it's labeled CMRNS, effective year build 1981 and 2012, and leasable area of 61,894 square feet. I believe the pictures are essentially the same, so we can just quickly browse through them to show the subject property that we're speaking of, and some of the images as well from the Google Street View is from the same year, so there's not much to add there. And then on page 8, we have the current usage of the property, so that should remain the same from the previous conversation. On page 9, we have no request for income information for this year. We have no subject sales history. You know, that might actually be wrong there for the income information, because I do believe I attached a income and expense mailer. So perhaps it just wasn't generated due to the replot, but I believe we do have a mailer for the subject. We have no sales history that was generated and no property leases as well. And then this might be one of the points that differ from the previous presentation. So these leases are used, which now has an economic period of April 1st, 2021, as opposed to April 1st, 2018. So for that reason, you will note that there are going to be some updated leases that are being shown now. And the updated leases that are being shown now have, I believe 2018 is the oldest that we have for leases on that are being used for comparables. And we do have rental rates ranging from, I believe it's $11.50 at the lower end, or $11 roughly. Yeah, I think $11.50, up to $30 on the much higher end. So if we look at the valuation for the 2023 assessment year, the total again is 61,894 square feet, but the modeled rent is $777,963. So very close to what we were speaking of. And then we have updated parameters in place. So we now have a 5% vacancy in place for this 2023 assessment cycle. A 3% expense rate now, and then a $9 shortfall per square foot. That gives us a revised net operating income of $689,031. And then from there, we have a modeled cap rate of 6.75%, so a very slight reduction. And the estimated value is $10,208,000. On page 13, we do have the summary of the valuation that we just spoke of. And then on page 14, we do have our updated cap rate information. So actually there was a compression here. If we note in the, for retail, we have power center and neighborhood has now been compressed into one. And then we do have the 20th and the 80th percentile. It goes from 6.35% to 6.95%. And then our subject is at 6.75%. For the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts, we have that on page 15. And then on page 16, and taking us to the end of the brief, is the subject's 2020 income and expense mailer information. And I believe that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pontanilla. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions for the assessor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a few. I don't want to run through the lease comparables again in any detail. Is it fair to say that the majority, if not all of the comparables here are the same shopping centers that were used in the last round?
That's fair to say. The only thing that would change would be the leases. So I looked for more current leases, but you're correct. Yep, it would be from the same market region.
Fair enough. And the again, the Jefferson properties. So there's 8 of them in this instance. All of those are the subject property as well, correct?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe that kind of skipped my my site when I was putting them together.
Okay, so I won't, I'll trust the panel to remember my comments with regard to the comparables. I won't run through those again. I can answer questions on that if you'd like. Looking at the modeled market income of $777,953. Again, this is model driven, correct?
That's correct.
And it's considerably higher than the in-place $721,987 for the subject as of the valuation date.
Just give me a second, Trevor. I'm just kind of going over there to see. Yes, it looks like the year to date for the subject is $689,413.
Okay, and then my last question is regarding the capitalization rate. So in the last cycle, there were different categorizations for retail, correct? Neighborhood was broken out on its own.
That appears to be the case. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and it's been compressed with the power center here.
That's what it's showing now. Yep.
Okay. So there really is no breakout between neighborhood and power center then for us to look at.
I believe so. In this let's call it a alignment of the portfolio that we have. It does look like they're both compressed into one overall now. It's just neighborhood shopping center.
Categorization. And if I recall correctly, for neighborhood shopping center in the city's information for the 2021 appeal, 20th to 80th percentile was 7.15 to 7.3.
I'm sorry, which are you talking about, Trevor?
So if in the 2021 appeal, which we were just conducting there, the city's neighborhood categorization for shopping centers, the 20th to 80th percentile was 7.15 to 7.3. Is that
Madam Chair, are we comparing assessments, or I'm not really sure how to proceed forward with that?
Just asking about the cap rate and for you to confirm the range for the previous.
For the previous, okay. I don't have that information anymore in front of me, but I'm sure if that's what it had in the portfolio, then that would be put forward. But I will bring to the panel's attention that this is a different assessment year, so some analysis was done, and perhaps there was a compression between the types. But if we're able to compare the two, then yes, they would have been separated.
okay? Those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
Just one similar to the last property on your income valuation.
Yep.
Those are just the modeled rents that are reflected. There's nothing additional for signage or any other income that's been added in?
Yes, I believe so. That's correct. It's just the rental rates and then the income stream that follows it.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Mr. Moretsky, do you have any questions?
Yeah, for your NOI, you got 689,031, page 12, page 29. The income and expense report reports net income loss of 281,330. However, there is a mortgage payment of 439,792. Is that what's constituting that discrepancy between 281 and the 689, or?
Yep. So it's always tricky when we have a different form of getting to our net operating income than some accountants do. So some accountants include some expenses that we don't include. So it's typically what I like to look at when I'm comparing my points of data. I like to look at is the overall rent that's being received, and then the square footage, because those two main drivers, those are common between our valuation and when I do my analysis with a mailer looking at their income information. from there, it's pretty good at comparing apples to apples. But once you start going through the expenses, the problem is that there's a lot of things that are being allocated an expense in the income stream that we might not necessarily include in our analysis. So you pointed it out yourself when you looked at, for example, I think you pointed out as mortgage payment. That's not something we would typically include. And that's a considerable expense of 439,000. We could even say, 439,793, let's say, for a rounding. So it's there's just different ways that we get to the net operating income. So usually the net income, it's one of those ones that it is useful to look at as a barometer, let's say, to sort of guide us that we are somewhat within the range of where we need to be. But once again, the driving factor is really the base rental rate received when it comes to just a quick analysis to see where we are for our valuation.
Okay, now on page 12, you have expenses, non-recoverable expenses of 3% allowed.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, did you not allow something different for the 2022? You had 2% for the previous assessment. Why is there 1% difference?
Oh, well, I believe you sort of answered your own question there. So the previous expense rate would have been for the previous assessment. So when the analysis was done leading up to the 2020 general reassessment, the information that we were using in our model led us to have 2% as the appropriate expense rate for the data inputs that were being used during that cycle. For 2023, the data points led the modelers to use a different expense rate. This time it would have been 3%. So it's a bit of a gray area for me because we are starting to talk about comparing assessments. And I understand that in this particular scenario, we did talk about the same property in 2021 and then carried forward to 2023. So I understand that it's a little difficult to decouple the two presentations from each other, but I would like to ask you to keep in mind that generally when we do our general reassessments, they are a fresh reassessment, so they don't necessarily have to be the same. They adjust, they fluctuate, market values fluctuate over time, and our assessments are going to carry forward in a similar fashion.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, when you're ready with your presentation, please.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Sorry to interrupt. If I can just have 2 minutes, please. I have to deal with one thing.
Okay,
Just 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
we'll recess for, how about we'll give you 5 minutes?
Thank you.
Okay.
I apologize.
I'd like to call the meeting back to order. We'll resume with our docket. Oh, the assessor's not there. No, we're not live yet.
Okay.
We'll just wait until the assessor comes back.
Okay.
Oops.
Yep.
I guess we need a
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. We will resume with our discussion at item 3, 1265 Jefferson Avenue, and Mr. Smith is about to begin his presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, same property. We're now dealing with the 2023 assessment year in this particular appeal. I will point out there was a question that came up regarding the base rent that the city had in their presentation in the income statement, and then a question about mortgage payments, etc., and whether that affected, I think, the rental rate. So just to be clear, the city, as well as ourselves, do this in the same manner. Obviously, financing is not something that can be considered with regard to the base rental rate, etc., or a legitimate expense to be included. So we ourselves, of course, don't include anything with regard to mortgage payments or other expense items that should not be considered. So just to be clear on that up front, where we are comparing apples to apples. In jumping back into the subject property, as I'd mentioned, much of the information to be discussed remains the same, so we won't cover the same ground twice, if that's all right with the panel members.
Yes.
And I will simply skip forward to the valuation aspect as discussed. The in-place rental rates for the subject property as of the April 1st, 2021 valuation date are shown on my page number 18 in the chart there. The total rent that you would come to would be $721,987. This equates to an overall average of $11.66 per square foot. Now, in looking at these rents, these are current as of that valuation date, so they are up to date. There really hasn't been any particular change in terms of upgrading of the tenants. It's still simply Dollarama and the Asia City as any kind of national tenancies for this particular property. The supermarket is still a local, etc. So our rental rates range from a low of $9.50 for the supermarket, and then we have typically in the $11 for Dollarama, and then we're looking at between $12 and $15.50 for the rental rates for the CRU units, and the Asia City coming in at $25 per square foot. Let's look at comps. For the most part, we're looking at the same properties with updated rents where appropriate. And you can see the rental comps on my page number 19. So we try and present the most recent information for the most comparable properties in order to determine whether the in-place rental rates are appropriate market rental rates or not. So again, at the top of the page, you have four comps that speak to the rental rate for the supermarket. Rental rate for the supermarket in the subject is $9.50. Here we have between $8.50, $9.50, $9.98, and $12 a square foot. So right in line with that. The remainder of the comps are typically the same locations as the previous comparables. Happy to go through them if the panel would like. And as you can see, our ranges are between $10 a square foot, 10, 25, 11, and then we have $12 into $13, 14, 15. So the locations that we're looking at here Again, I've already discussed them, but we tried to pick centers that were neighborhood oriented and would have similar influences and not be, not have, majority national tendencies with national covenants, things of that nature. So I'll point out perhaps a few here for comparison. 5114 Roblin is well located in the Charleswood area. We have a restaurant there in line in CRU paying $14 a square foot. That particular shopping center is at the corner of Dieppe and Roblin. It has an RBC and a number of other national tenancies in it. 2020 Corridon is very well located in the River Heights area. Long established shopping center there, $15.50 a square foot for a 2019 lease over a 5-year term. Let's see if we have any other updates that I should point out. I think for the most part, the other properties have been mentioned. As noted, we've provided the updated leases where appropriate here, and you can see that the rental rates for these similar properties are very much in line with the subject property in terms of the rental rates that are being charged. So again, as an investor, the rental income that your 100% rental income that you would achieve would be $721,987 as of the valuation date. You're not going to be looking at paying for rental income that's not being achieved at the market in the property as of the valuation date. Jumping forward, so we believe that the in-place rental rates are appropriate, and we've used them in our valuation. Jumping forward, we have used a 5% vacancy rate, as you can see on my page 21 at the top. Falls very well in line with the market information provided there. Again, we've applied a 5% non-recoverable allowance for the subject property. Happy to answer any questions on that if you have them. And the shortfall rate of $9 a square foot is also appropriate for the subject. Now, looking at capitalization rate, I've already mentioned or alluded to this, so and I'm not comparing assessments, I'm referring to material change in how things are categorized. In the 2021 appeal, so April 1, 2018 valuation date, the city had 5 categorizations for retail in terms of breaking down cap rates, one of them being neighborhood with 20th to 80th percentile, 7.15 to 7.3. They had a separate power center breakout at that time. For the 2023 assessment cycle, they have combined those two into one. Now, power centers are inherently different than a neighborhood shopping center. Power centers are almost exclusively national brands, national tenancies. They have very strong covenants. They're on major intersections, and they drive greater rental rates for all of these reasons, and have more certainty to them and are of a larger scale. So you're looking at purchasers that are of a more national level or international level, for that matter, much better capitalized organizations that are looking at the purchase of those, and typically the capitalization rate is lower than it will be for a neighborhood shopping center. So when you combine the two into one categorization, it skews the capitalization rate for neighborhood shopping centers in a downward direction. In addition to that, I'm not aware of any transactions of power centers in the relative time frame that where the information is publicly available. And indeed, with the valuation date being April 1, 2021, we are well into the COVID timeframe as of that date. COVID essentially hitting in March of 2020. Investment transactions dropped off a cliff at that time frame. There was no certainty for purchasers what was going to happen moving forward with regard to tenancies and the income stream. So there was very little information to rely on in determining cap rates for that time frame. But suffice it to say, compression would be as of the valuation date would be somewhat unlikely given the investment climate that was out there. Banks were not lending. Other mortgage lenders were not keen to lend either. They changed their parameters for lending when they did lend, demanding much more down payments and certainty from purchasers, etc., to be sure that they had their assets covered in the case of default, etc. So it's unlikely that we would see nearly a 1% decline in capitalization rate between those two timeframes. So again, not comparing assessments, simply providing information with regard to that aspect of the valuation. So moving forward and looking at cap rate, I do have three comparables to provide here. One of them transacting in 2021. This is a retail strip mall on Henderson. You can see the strip center shown at the top there. It has a Dollarama in it, Quiznos, and then a lot of local tenancies. Transacted at a cap rate of 8.9%. It's well located on North Henderson. Then we have the same 130 Osborne, 435 Stradbrook, 7.5 cap in 2018, and 1800 Corridon as shown on page number 24. So this is a very well located, relatively newly built strip center in the River Heights area. So certainly a strong location. That transacted at a cap rate of 7%. Looking at the subject property and all the information I've already discussed, we applied a cap rate of 7% to our valuation. This is summarized on page 24. So if you apply using the in-place rental rates, vacancy rate of 5% as per the market information, expense allowance of 5%, shortfall of $9 a square foot, and a cap rate of 7%, we come to a final market value of $8,911,000. And the addenda materials include the income and expense, as well as discussion of cap rates as of April 1, 2021. And then at the very back from A9 onwards, we have a local news article referring to discussion of commercial real estate in Winnipeg. And we have local expert Wayne Johnson providing his input with regard to the retail market and his discussion of the challenges that it faced in that time frame. So that is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Pontanilla, do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moretsky, do you have any questions?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
My only question is on the income statement on the valuation. I think if I'm correct, what you've done is taken the, 1166 or 1167 per square foot and multiplied it by the available square footage of 61,894 feet to come up with your potential income?
Well, not exactly, but it does result in that same 1166. So if you go back to page number 18, Mr. Mann, what I've done there is summarize each of the leases as of the valuation date and the net rent that they are paying as of the valuation date and their leasable area, giving you the annual rent for each of those tenancies. So it comes down to an overall $721,987. And then if you divide it by the leasable area, you get 1166 as an average. So it is the actual in-place rental rates.
Okay, the other income that hasn't been included is signage rental. Is that correct? Looking at page 23, I think it is, or 20. It's in your addendum anyway. It's the actuals. It was in the city's, the assessor's brief as well. There's under the revenue, there's a small amount for sign rental, a little bit of interest income, but that's just other income that doesn't form part of your calculation.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got. Thank you. And I have no questions. So, Mr. Pontinia, is there a desire for summation?
I have no summation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I have no summation. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have heard all the items scheduled on today's docket, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you very much, Mr. Pontinia and Mr. Smith.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day, Trevor. Thanks.
Have a good rest of the day.